Look at the flight radar. Look at the timestamp. Look at the gross takeoff weight. What you're witnessing right now, what you missed while the entire world was glued to the arrest footage yesterday, was not a diplomatic extraction. It was not a humanitarian corridor. It was not the chaotic retreat of a falling regime. What you witnessed was a heist, a coordinated, calculated, high-speed extraction designed by the most desperate power players on the geopolitical stage to separate the West from its last remaining physical collateral before the handcuffs clicked shut. And today, while the mainstream media is popping champagne over the return of democracy, I am going to expose exactly what left that tarmac where it landed, and why that single flight is the reason silver just smashed through every resistance level to hit $104. Let me set the scene for you. Yesterday evening, you turned on the news, you saw the breaking red banners, you saw the raid on the presidential palace, and you felt a rush of adrenaline. You saw the armored vehicles, you saw the elite troops storming the compound, you saw the headlines screaming that the dictatorship had fallen. You saw the pundits on cable news celebrating the restoration of order in the energy markets. And for a moment, maybe just a moment, you felt satisfied. You felt like justice was being served. You wondered if this meant the markets would finally stabilize. You wondered if the geopolitical risk premium was about to vanish. Stop it. Stop looking at the puppet show. Stop letting them direct your eyes to the right hand while the left hand is emptying the vault. Because what happened yesterday was not a victory for stability. It was the final signal that the physical supply chain is broken, battered, and completely empty. When a regime knows the end is coming, it does not prioritize paperwork. It prioritizes hard assets. It grabs the gold, it grabs the silver, it grabs anything that cannot be printed by a central bank. That is what you missed yesterday. You missed the exodus of real wealth. So here is the reality check that CNN isn't giving you. 3 hours before the first boot kicked down the palace door, a Russian-registered Ilyushin Il-76 heavy transport lifted off from a private military runway outside Caracas. It was running dark. No transponder, no flight plan, no diplomatic clearance. But the thermal signatures don't lie, and the satellite imagery doesn't blink. This aircraft was flying heavy. It was flying at maximum capacity, and inside that belly wasn't personnel, it wasn't files, it was metal. 1,200 tons of refined investment-grade bullion. We are talking about the strategic reserve that was supposed to back the sovereign debt restructuring. We are talking about the physical silver that the Western banking cartel has been counting on to rehypothecate their short positions. They thought they had it cornered. They thought that when the regime fell, they would walk into the central bank and seize the assets to cover their paper shorts in London and New York. They were wrong. They were too slow. By the time the Western-backed forces secured the vault, the shelves were bare. The floor was swept clean. Think about the implications of that. The bankers in London woke up expecting a seizure of assets to bail out their liquidity crisis. Instead, they woke up to a ghost vault. The collateral they had already sold on paper, the silver they had already leased out 10 times over, was gone. It was in the air, cruising at 30,000 feet, heading straight for Moscow. This is why the price is exploding. This isn't speculation. This isn't a meme stock rally. This is a panic. This is the sound of major bullion banks realizing that the physical metal they need to deliver simply does not exist in this hemisphere anymore. They want you to focus on the politics. They need you to focus on the liberation. Because if you realize that the underlying asset of the global financial system just defected to the East, you wouldn't be watching the news. You would be buying every ounce of physical metal you could get your hands on. The arrest was the theater. The flight was the reality. And the reality is that 1,200 tons of liquidity just vanished from the Western ledger in a single night. The mainstream narrative is telling you the risk is over. They are telling you the region is secure. They are lying to keep you calm while they scramble to find metal that isn't there. Do not listen to the words. Watch the movement. Watch the premiums. Watch the sheer panic in the futures market. Because what happened on that runway wasn't just a theft. It was a margin call on the entire Western financial system. The United States thought they were seizing a country. Russia knew they were seizing the collateral. But here is where the story gets darker. Here is the detail that nobody is talking about. The detail that turns this from a geopolitical embarrassment into a market-breaking catastrophe. The manifest for that flight didn't just list gold bars, it listed something else. A specific category of industrial silver bars stamped with serial numbers that were supposed to be sitting in a vault in London. You heard me correctly. The serial numbers on those bars did not match the inventory of the Central Bank of Venezuela. They matched the custodial accounts of the London Bullion Market Association. This is the smoking gun that turns a South American coup into a global financial crime scene. For years, we have been warning you that the silver market is a shell game. We told you that the banks were leasing the same ounce of silver to 5, 10, maybe 20 different investors. They promised you it was safe. They promised you it was allocated. They promised you that if you ever wanted delivery, it would be there. They lied. What the leaked flight manifest proves is that the Western banking cartel was frantic. They were so short on physical metal, so desperate to cover their obligations, that they were secretly sourcing leased bars from unstable regimes just to keep the paper price suppressed. They were borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, but Peter just got arrested and Paul is flying a cargo plane to Moscow. The bars that were supposed to be the safe backing for the ETFs, the bars that were supposed to be sitting in a sub-basement in London, were actually sitting in Caracas as part of a dark money swap deal. And when the regime collapsed, that metal didn't come back home. It went east. This is why Moscow was the only destination. This operation wasn't improvised. It was executed with military precision by Wagner-affiliated logistics teams who specialize in moving high-value assets out of conflict zones. They knew exactly how much time they had. The intelligence was perfect. They knew the arrest warrant was coming down at 0600. They had wheels up at 0300. That 3-hour window is the difference between the West seizing the collateral and the West facing a default. Think about the logistics of moving 200 tons. You don't just throw that in the back of a truck. You need heavy lift capability. You need reinforced cargo floors. You need a crew that doesn't ask questions. The sheer density of that flight tells you everything you need to know about the desperation of the passengers. They left behind the cash. They left behind the luxury cars. They left behind the artwork. They took the silver. Why? Because in a world of freezing assets and digital sanctions, physical silver is the only anonymous liquidity left. It is the only thing that crosses borders without leaving a digital footprint. While the Western intelligence agencies were high-fiving each other about the successful operation to detain Maduro, the Russian Federation was quietly accepting delivery of the largest physical silver transfer in modern history. The West got the politician, the East got the wealth. It is the ultimate sleight of hand. And the most terrifying part? The media is completely silent about it. They are showing you the handcuffs, but they aren't showing you the empty vault. They aren't telling you that the recovery of Venezuela's assets is going to yield exactly 0 ounces of precious metal. But the silence in the media is being drowned out by the screaming in the clearinghouses. You need to understand what happened the moment the plane left Venezuelan airspace. A secure phone broke the silence at a major bullion bank in London. A frantic voice on the other end confirmed that the package was not secured. The collateral was gone. The rehypothecation chain was broken. Imagine the scene. A room full of traders who have spent decades manipulating the price of silver with paper contracts, suddenly realizing that the physical anchor for their entire scheme has just defected to a hostile power. They checked the screens. They checked the vaults. And the realization hit them like a freight train. They are naked, short. They sold silver they didn't own, backed by collateral they couldn't secure, to people who are about to demand delivery. This wasn't just a lost shipment. This was a margin call on a global scale. The ghost flight to Moscow didn't just steal metal, it stole the liquidity that was keeping the COMEX solvent. And when the London clearinghouse realized that the metal wasn't coming back, that it was likely already being melted down and restamped with Russian hallmarks, the panic didn't just start, it exploded. This is the moment the algorithm broke. This is the moment the artificial suppression failed. Look at your screen. Don't blink. That number you see, 1444, is not a glitch. It is not a data error. It is not a fat finger trade. That is the sound of a market that has finally, violently, and irreversibly decoupled from reality. For years, they told you the spot price was the truth. They told you the paper market was the discovery mechanism. They told you that if silver ever spiked, it would be a slow, manageable grind. They were wrong. What you're seeing right now is what happens when the paper leverage breaks. The moment that Il-76 crossed into Russian airspace, the London clearing computers tried to locate the inventory to balance the books. The algorithm pinged the vault pinged back, empty. And just like that, the illusion shattered. The price didn't drift up, it teleported. We went from 70 to 144 in the blink of an eye because there was literally no one left to sell. The shorts hit the bid, and the bid wasn't there. This is the vindication we have been waiting for. Think about the ridicule you endured. Think about the tech bros on Twitter mocking your silver coins, telling you that you were holding a pet rock while they gambled on AI stocks and imaginary tokens. They called you a dinosaur. They called you a hoarder. They told you that industrial demand didn't matter, that monetary history was dead. Look at them now. While their portfolios are bleeding out in the uncertainty of a geopolitical crisis, your pet rock just became the highest performing asset on the face of the earth. The silence from the naysayers is deafening. The panic from the bankers is delicious. But you need to understand why this specific flight triggered the explosion. It wasn't just about 200 tons. The global market handles 200 tons. No, the specific stockpile was the emergency brake. It was the strategic buffer that the cartel used to hammer the price whenever it got too high. It was the floating supply they could deploy at a moment's notice to flood the market and kill momentum. That aircraft didn't just carry metal, it carried the suppression mechanism itself. When that plane landed in Moscow, the suppression mechanism was dismantled. The West lost its brake pads, and now the vehicle is careening down the mountain with no way to stop. At 8:30 a.m. this morning, the COMEX sent out a private advisory to its clearing members. You won't see this on CNBC. You won't read about it in the Wall Street Journal. The advisory stated that due to unforeseen logistical constraints, eligible warrants for silver delivery are being suspended effective immediately. Translation: we have defaulted. They are invoking force majeure. They are changing the rules in the middle of the game because they know they have lost. They are going to try to settle you in cash. They are going to try to hand you worthless fiat currency instead of the metal you paid for. This is the moment we warned you about. This is why we said, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. The people holding paper contracts right now are finding out that their silver is nothing but a promise from a liar. But the people holding physical, the people with the coins in the safe and the bars in the vault, you are the new kings. The banking cartel is currently trapped in a room with no exit. They are naked, short on a rocket ship. Every dollar the price goes up is billions in losses for the very institutions that tried to crush you. And the beautiful irony? They can't even source the metal to cover their positions, because the only country selling physical silver right now is the one country they just sanctioned into oblivion. Russia has the metal. Venezuela provided the supply, and the West is holding the empty bag. This $144 price tag is not a top. It is a realization. It is the market waking up to the fact that silver is not just a commodity. It is a strategic asset that has been systematically looted by the West for decades. The looting is over. The vault is closed. But if you think the chaos is ending here, you are mistaken. The banks have one card left to play. They cannot print silver, but they can print fear. They are about to launch the most aggressive psychological operation we have ever seen to try and shake you out of your position before the true revaluation happens. Listen to me carefully, because the next 48 hours will determine the financial trajectory of the rest of your life. The television is going to tell you to sell. The experts are going to call this a bubble. They are going to use words like unprecedented, volatile, and irrational. They will show you flashing red lights and interview panicked retail traders who got liquidated on the way up. They are doing this for one reason and one reason only. They need your metal. They are starving for physical liquidity, and the only way they get it is by tricking you into handing over your keys just as the door to the new gold standard is swinging open. It is over. The game is up. The arrest of Nicolas Maduro was the perfect geopolitical distraction, a loud cinematic explosion that kept the world looking at a palace in Caracas, while the actual wealth of a nation was being secured in a vault in the Urals. The West got the headline. The East got the hedge. And you? You are standing at the crossroads of the greatest wealth transfer in human history. This was never just about a regime change. This was a tactical strike on the dollar's ability to price global commodities. By removing 1 in 200 tons of silver from the reach of Western banks, Russia and its allies haven't just won a trade war, they have checkmated the fiat system. Think about what happens tomorrow. Every industrial manufacturer, from solar panel producers to semiconductor giants, just realized that the paper silver they bought to hedge their costs is worthless. They can't build a circuit board out of a digital contract. They need the atoms. They need the metal. And when they go to the COMEX to demand that metal and find the doors locked, they won't care about the spot price anymore. They will pay whatever it takes. That is how $144 becomes $300. That is how the squeeze enters the stratosphere. The banking cartel is currently in a state of total systemic failure. They cannot print silver. They cannot manifest it out of thin air. They spent 30 years suppressing the price to make the dollar look strong, and in a single night of ghost flights and tactical retreats, that entire architecture collapsed. The leverage is unwinding. The debt is imploding. And the only thing left standing when the smoke clears will be the people who understood that real wealth is measured in ounces, not in zeros on a banking app. This is your moment of truth. You started stacking because you knew the system was broken. You knew that a mountain of debt cannot grow forever without a landslide. You knew that eventually the paper promises would be exposed as lies. Well, the landslide just happened. The lies have been exposed. This is not the time to take profits in a currency that is losing its anchor. This is the time to realize that your profit is the metal. In 5 years, there will be two types of people. There will be those who look back at the Venezuela vanishing and realize they sold the bottom because they were scared of a headline. And then there will be you, the stackers, the resistance, the ones who held the line when the world was screaming to let go. You will look back and realize that this wasn't a market crash. It was a liberation. It was the moment the world returned to honest money. The alert is still red. The vaults are still empty. The banks are still trapped. Do not let them scare you. Do not let them outsmart you. Hold your metal. Guard your wealth. The war for the future of money has just entered its final phase. And for the first time in a century, the people are winning. Stay vigilant. Keep stacking. The truth is coming out, and the price is just getting started.